Few characters in Blue Lock offer substance, but this one's a little different. When we first meet Nagi, bro is slumped, chained down by the weight of sloth to the point that he considered even chewing to be a pain. Nagi was so consumed by idleness and boredom, the only direction he had was Ryo, the only force that could move the statue that was Nagi, even a little bit. The cause behind Nagi's silent suffering, however, was the weakness he perceived in those around him. To Nagi, victory had no true meaning because to him, defeat was impossible. Nagi did not have to try to win, so he never did. His mindset was a breeding ground for the curse of negligence shown in his training, giving up on it after only a small amount of time, since to Nagi, there was just no point. This is why Nagi looked down on Kuon so much for trying so hard to stay in Blue Lock. The concept of effort to Nagi was synonymous with the concept of weakness, only reinforced by Ryo doing nothing to change Nagi. Ryo viewed Nagi as his treasure. In Nagi, Ryo saw victory and he thought nothing could stop him. That is, until this is challenged by Team Z's Yoichi Isagi. Nagi's view on effort irritates Isagi. To Isagi, someone that has had to destroy himself just to survive in Blue Lock. To him, the idea that effort is a sign of weakness lights a fire in Isagi, and he swears he will bring down Nagi. And on the field, we see just how truly monstrous Nagi is. Almost single-handedly, Nagi dismantles Team Z piece by piece, completely outplaying all of its players. And when Nagi encounters Isagi once again on the pitch, he cannot see the struggle Isagi endures. Nagi views every action Isagi takes as simply pointless. He views Isagi as completely useless and can't understand why Isagi refuses to give in. Why do you keep trying? And here a core rivalry is born between Isagi and Nagi, unattainable natural talent versus overwhelming effort, the prodigy versus the mediocre. Nagi wants to know why Isagi can push himself so hard with such little talent, why he's able to stand against the impossible and make it possible, how he thinks he can turn certain defeat into absolute victory. Nagi may have thought he was getting inside Isagi's head. He may have thought he was breaking down Isagi's resolve. He may have thought he killed Isagi. But in that brief exchange when Nagi opened the door to Isagi's mind, he let out the monster inside Isagi. This single moment is what caused the unavoidable victory of Team Z, because in this moment, Nagi started the evolution of all of Team Z. Player after player on Team Z evolves and surpasses their limits, starting with Bachira. Each player channels their own path to victory, and they turn the tides on the prodigies, evening out the score. The threat of defeat, a concept so foreign to Ryo and Nagi that they couldn't even fathom how others could try against them, was born. And sensing this in Ryo caused Nagi to instinctually act, to instinctually evolve past his limits, or moving on his own to try and take down Team Z, without even realizing it, without being conscious of it. For perhaps the first time in Nagi's life, he had to put effort in. Seishiro Nagi was finally giving it his all because the weakness he had perceived in others had exceeded his expectations. From that weakness came the strength of determination, the overwhelming desire to win, which forced him to evolve past those limitations that Nagi perceived, and entered into his realm of football. Nagi's only response, the only possible response, was his own evolution, an evolution born out of necessity, out of the fear of loss. This is the curiosity born in Nagi, the curiosity of fun, the desire to avoid defeat, the curiosity of what his strongest self looked like. Who Nagi was only seconds earlier and who he is right now were two entirely separate people. Nagi had not only become a different player, he had become a different person. This was Seishiro Nagi's awakening. Nagi's evolution was an expected outcome of a prodigy being pushed to his limits. It was within a new tier altogether. His soul evolution completely changed how his entire team attacked, and it threw all of Team Z through a complete loop. But even though Nagi's evolution had filled the pitch with his light, there was still a single shadow that it had not touched, and that was Yoichi Isagi. When pushed to the limit, when outmatched, outclassed, when all hope is lost, Yoichi Isagi is at his strongest, because the more of his opponent's light that exists, the more Yoichi Isagi has to devour. In response to Nagi's overwhelming light, Isagi begins devouring it, rapidly breaking his limits and bolting toward the same level as Nagi. Even when the prodigy, Seishiro Nagi, redefined football for his team, Yoichi Isagi was right behind him, ready to consume the skill that Nagi had just newly discovered. Even as Nagi continued to grow beyond even that tier of skill, symbolized by the ever darker aura, the ever monstrous mist that surrounds Blue Lock players, Yoichi only continues to devour it, and Nagi could sense it. In the 1 vs 1, Seishiro Nagi knew that out of every player on that pitch, Yoichi Isagi was the most dangerous. Nagi could sense the same monster inside Yoichi that Bachira could, and he knew he had to stop it before it entirely consumed his pitch. But for all the talent that Seishiro Nagi had, nothing he could do could stand against the monster inside Yoichi Isagi, and mid-clash, at the climax of the game, Isagi continues to adapt, to evolve, to devour the pitch, and awakens to the beginning of his goal formula, the direct shot. For the first time in both Ryo and Nagi's lives, they had experienced the monster that was Yoichi Isagi, and with it, defeat. Nagi considered Isagi to be the most amazing player in that game, and from him, Nagi discovered the idea of frustration. And to learn more about this new concept, this foreign idea, he paired up with Isagi during the second selection. He realized he and Ryo were not the strongest, and in an effort to truly understand football and what it means to be strong, he breaks free from the leash that Ryo had on him. From his loss, Nagi not only discovered a part of himself, but he also broke free from the chains of Ryo that was holding down his potential. Isagi and Nagi form one of the most interesting partnerships in all of Blue Lock. Both are able to push each other to evolve past their own limits, and when one discovers a new level of potential, the other breaks past it too, to form a new entirely different tier of power. It's truly one of the most fascinating narratives in all of Blue Lock. Even moving on to the battle with Itoshi Rin, the connection Nagi formed with Isagi sounds strong, and Nagi is able to learn from Isagi's overwhelming potential, but also is there to raise him back up after his crushing defeat by Rin Itoshi. This then further evolves during the 3-on-3 battle with Ryo, Kunigami, and Chigiri. Facing his former team, and facing another truly powerful team, Nagi and Isagi develop their egos, the foundation of Blue Lock's training program. They both develop the desire to crush the opposing team. It's different from the desire to win that Nagi previously had. This desire is more like a hunger, a thirst for victory. It isn't a natural occurrence like it had been for Nagi up to this point. This was a thrill Nagi had never felt before. A truly strong team had brought out the fire in him. You can even see this in how Nagi plays in the first selection. Nagi played almost as if he was the only player on his team. He was the focus, and aside from Ryo and Zentetsu, the only real threat to Team Z. However, in the 3 vs 3, Nagi is fighting for passes. He works in tandem with Isagi and plays on their synergy. He puts in the effort to capitalize on Isagi's setups, but is also there to set up plays himself. It's the symbiosis between Nagi and Isagi that allow them to create the chemical reaction that allows both of them to instinctively understand plays. And it's only possible because of the evolution of skill and personality that Nagi went through. And perhaps this was Isagi's goal all along. When Isagi sees Baro wasting his potential, it infuriates him. It's irritating to Isagi that so much potential is being thrown away. Maybe, even if unconsciously, Isagi saw this in Nagi too. He saw the true potential Nagi had, but was being held down by Ryo, and in defeating Nagi, he was able to bring out that potential. And maybe Isagi did this out of a passion for the sport, or maybe he did it to enhance his own ego. There is a monster in Isagi that devours his opponents. Maybe he elevates these players beyond their means solely so he can devour them to become the true egoist. But how does that relate to Nagi? Well, I think there is a monster inside Nagi too. We saw glimpses of it in the final battle against Team Z. A monster capable of devouring the strategy of others. To me, the reason Nagi is the perfect rival to Isagi is because of the monsters inside of them. Nagi's monster devours the tricks and intricacies of his opponents to enhance himself and becomes stronger, while Isagi devours their talent, consuming their egos and forcing them to submit to his own. Isagi devours his opponent's talent to become stronger, while Nagi devours his opponent's intricacies to become stronger. When paired up, these two enter into an endless cycle of breaking past each other's limits to become true monsters on the field. This is the reason Nagi is chasing after Isagi, and why he tries so hard to reach his level, because Isagi is the true monster that Nagi wants to surpass. This culminates in Nagi's monologue against Rin's team, where Nagi makes it clear that from defeat came his insatiable hunger for strength, a hunger that he would abandon his best friend for, and that's the change Nagi has undergone. He can never go back to who he once was, because as long as he is with Isagi, there is no limit to the heights he can achieve, and no end to the opponents he can devour. This is Nagi's evolution. This is Seishiro Nagi's Blue Frenzy.